want to cheat and sort of put the two movies together in a way and call them like one project. But in the
Yeah,
same way that you were saying that Arrival was an up leveling for him and getting him on a bigger canvas, this is that even times 10, as big as Arrival was in terms of the
definitely.
tools that he has. And I think just from again, a technical achievement, this is something that requires like top-notch filmmaker to pull off and to bring in all the top-notch craftsmen and production design, score, everything. And it was editing, etc., cinematography, and it all works on this level. And despite my, aversion to him, I think this is such a successful adaptation and presentation of the material that I kind of gets beyond a little bit of my apprehension to him. And I think too, much like I was saying, the Sicario is sort of a good his worldview matching material. I think this is similar in the sense of this is not it's an examination of the hero's journey, not the typical hero's journey of like a Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker or what we're used to,
Mhm.
what we want to get as an audience. You want to see a hero go through trials and tribulations and at the end become a good person and defeat the enemy and etc. And that's not what Frank Herbert's Dune is about. It's actually about the opposite. It's about the hero being the bad guy. And I think that matches well with Denis Villeneuve's worldview potentially, and that's why the movie then works for me. It's not fighting against that tension at all. And going back and rewatching Dune actually ahead of Dune 2, really the movie is a lot more effective to me. Like the pacing worked more, the story I understood, and I thought again after Dune 2 too, those two things together as sort of one project, I think is something that I don't know if another filmmaker could have accomplished it, and that's why I have to say this is
Mhm.
his masterpiece because of that.
Yeah, well said. I agree. I don't think anybody can accomplish this. And I think it's like we've been saying, it's the complexity of the dense storytelling, the world building, the epic nature of it, but yet making it real. And when I say real, it is that kind of gray, right? That, yeah,
Hmm.
things are not what they seem to us and just from within, but also externally. And that's what these movies are about. And maybe
Hmm.
you're right. Maybe his worldview is like that, of kind of that. I wouldn't call it too pessimistic, especially after these recent movies, Arrival onward. Like before that, yeah, definitely very, very dark.
Hmm.
But to me, this sort of feels more like how life is, right? That yeah, we are enslaved to some or the other bigger structure or power or our own guilt or how we were raised, but it also doesn't make us all evil. It's not so black and white. It's kind of what these movies are. So, but yeah, the thing that I keep coming back to is just the spectacle of it, just underlined with the emotion of it. And I think that's
Hmm.
just so hard to do. And telling these complex stories, which somebody like me who's not really into science fiction and such, I would definitely tune out.
Hmm.
I'm somebody who's not watched a single episode of Game of Thrones, which
Oh,
is
really? Oh, you
yeah, which is
should. You
I know
definitely should. Yeah.
I'm sure I love it once I got
Yeah.
into it, but this sort of material doesn't necessarily attract me. And the fact
Mm.
that I was fully with it, followed it, got into it like that, it's just I think the credit goes to him and who he assembled. So yeah,
Yeah.
makes
No,
sense that you would put this as his masterpiece.
yeah, and well, we'll see if what the third one, which I
Yeah.
think he will be involved in, sort of if that completes the story that he wants to tell, or how that works with these two. But I do feel like these two at least will be remembered as a successful, like major sci-fi epic, which is something that is hard to find
Yeah.
nowadays. Outside of Avatar, I can't really think of something along this level that's not just considered like recycled, you know, IP that we're just churning out, even though the original artist is no longer involved. I think he's like these movies remind me more of James Cameron in a way, in terms of like what you were saying, where the epicness matches the story and the emotion, which is impressive to pull off. It's very few directors could do it, and I was thought Denny did.
Yeah. Except in that case, the cheesiness is cheese. I mean, the emotionality is the cheese, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on it depends on the movie. Yeah, with Avatar, you can say that, but I think that is just again the more positive. Like Cameron is definitely a more of an optimist on humanity and wants to inspire people to be the best in them, even though it
Yeah.
might not be a reflection of the current world, but you want, at least for my movies, I want to have them, messages be aspirational to help me be better instead of just be like, yeah, this is what the world is. And it's like, oh, that's sad. Like, why even get up in the morning? But no,
That's true.
I hear you. Avatar could be another conversation we'll have. I'm
We've
sure
already talked about it. I'm
we
not
could
getting
never
into that
stop
again.
talking about Avatar. But so then let's move on to the next category then, which is wild card. So this is a movie that we want to bring forward that is something interesting, whether it's positive or negative about the director and your experience with him. So what is your wild card for Villeneuve?
So I actually put Dune 1 on this because as somebody who was following his career, I guess now in retrospect, and you articulated too, like this material and as his scale kept growing over time, it no shocker that he made this. But at that time, I don't think he'd really made something like this. And I guess
Mm-mm.
Blade Runner 2049 was a little bit of a
Little.
intro, yeah, into this world, but he hadn't made like a big piece of, writing that people are so aware of and are in love with. It's sort of in your own Star Wars sort of franchise, if you will. He hadn't done that. So I think it was pretty bold and it could have gone wrong. And, I don't think when I was watching Sicario and being totally scared for all the people involved on screen, I don't think I would have imagined that this is what he would have done. So to me, this is a wild card. Like to me, like
Mm,
all the other movies of like the ones he made, like Enemy and such, they're very much in line with the trajectory he was on if he had just
mm,
stayed there.
mm-hmm.
And the fact that he made this zag but did it in a very kind of earned methodical way by just incrementally stepping up as he kept going up and then kind of just went for the big kahuna, as they say, and delivered it. That's why to me this is a wild card, because sometimes wild cards can be huge bets
Yeah.
which may not always land. Typically, wildcards are kind of offbeat things, as people might think of it, but I went for the big one.
I think that's a really interesting point you made about a zag. And I think it is out of like not what you would think if you looked at his filmography that he would accomplish something like this. But then in thinking back on the movies that he made, the DNA is kind of there.
Yeah,
It
it
was
makes
funny, like
sense.
Arrival deals with this. We were just talking about projection of the future, and there's all
Right.
these visions in Dune and Dune 2 about future and how that affects the present. So it's like the pieces were there, but I never would have seen them that they were. And
No.
I don't think even Denis probably knew he was building towards this, but he was
Yeah.
doing the right training with all the rest of his films that we were talking about today too into delivering something like Dune, which I don't think anyone else could have delivered. So I think that's it is a zag, but like in a way, maybe he was predestined
Yeah.
to do this.
Oh.
Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.